morning. We are in New York, and we're wondering whether there was a spy inside Mar-a-Lago. New reports claiming an FBI informant prompted the raid on Monday. How the former president is fighting back. Part of our coverage today. In addition to that, good morning. I'm Bill Hemmer. Hello to you at home. Hello to you. Nice color.
Good morning. I thank you very much. I'm Dana Perino. This is America's Newsroom. So I really thought that we would have some sort of information from the FBI or DOJ.
Yes.
We don't, and it doesn't appear that we're going to, but we do have this. There are new reports claiming that an informant tipped off the FBI, flagging the exact location of classified documents being kept at the president's home. As of now, the Trump team is not planning to release its copy of the search warrant. The Albany Times-Union and Judicial Watch have asked the federal magistrate judge to publicly release it.
So happening at the same time, the former president testifying in New York yesterday, part of a separate civil investigation into his business practices. He declined to answer any questions, calling the probe part of a larger witch hunt that left him no choice but to plead the fifth.
Meanwhile, the White House and DOJ also remaining tight-lipped, refusing to explain Monday's unprecedented raid.
That's not something that I can talk about, so I'd refer you to the department.
Mr. President, what do you say to Americans?
The DOJ will be fair, Mr. President.
What do you say to Americans who think this is a politically motivated search of Mar-a-Lago?
So President Biden ignoring those questions as he heads off to a vacation with his family in South Carolina. On that trip, on camera, climbing up the steps of Air Force One, his son Hunter, who's also the subject of an ongoing federal investigation. Team Fox coverage begins now. Barbara, New York, on deck with analysis. David Lee Miller at the Trump Tower in New York, but we begin in Florida where the action was at Mar-a-Lago. Phil Keating, good morning to you, Phil.
Good morning, my friend Bill. As the National Archives pursued what it believed were still missing secret, sensitive, or classified documents, presumably brought to Mar-a-Lago and stored there, well, communication then began between it and Trump advisors and his staff about trying to get access and retrieve those boxes of documents. What is in dispute is whether that cordial communication broke down in June and July, which the DOJ insists did happen, and that the Trump advisors still insist did not happen. New reporting by the Wall Street Journal says the key thing that led to the search warrant request was a tip from somebody on the inside that there were still missing records on site. In early June, a few FBI agents met with Trump staff and later asked for them to better secure a certain storage room containing these documents. The Trump staff did just that. As Trump has pointed out this week, that stronger lock was eventually broken off Monday as the team of FBI agents left with about 10 or 12 additional boxes of material. Rooms searched on Monday were Trump's bedroom, his office, and a storage room. According to the report, the FBI agents were dressed casually and told not to bring guns, which they typically do. The Journal also reports that the DOJ this summer also asked for Mar-a-Lago surveillance footage, which was in fact provided. A Trump attorney who says she was here Monday described the day like this.
There were about 30 to 40 FBI agents that I saw, 5 of which were wearing suits. The rest were in cargo pants, masks, and gloves. And they basically had unfettered access to the property. They refused to talk to me.
And while it's been almost entirely supporters of Trump on the ground all week near his home, yesterday a banner plane flew overhead, seemingly heckling the former president with the message of ha, 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 ha. Despite Republican demands for more specifics from the DOJ on the search warrant and details, that has not happened. And as Dana mentioned earlier, the Trump team has yet to release its copy of that search warrant. Back to you.
Thank you, Phil. Starting our coverage, Phil Keating at Mar-a-Lago. Dana?
And our Fox team coverage continues with David Lee Miller at Trump Tower in New York City. Good morning, David Lee.
Good morning, Dana. The former president's deposition was supposed to take place in January. His lawyers went to court, and they were able to delay the proceedings, but ultimately they could not prevent them from taking place. Mr. Trump didn't want to give testimony under oath, and he didn't. Instead, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Now, this is not the first time the 45th president has been under investigation. Coinciding with the New York Attorney General's probe, the Manhattan DA is conducting a criminal investigation into Mr. Trump's businesses. The Atlanta DA is investigating Mr. Trump's effort to overturn Georgia's 2020 election results. In the recent past, Mr. Trump came under scrutiny by the FBI, which investigated what turned out to be meritless claims that Trump colluded with Russia to influence the 2016 election. When he left Trump Tower Wednesday morning, the former president headed to the AG's office, and then he, as he departed, appeared upbeat, even waving to the cameras. For the last 3 years, New York's Attorney General has been investigating allegations Trump inflated the value of certain properties in order to obtain loans and for other financial gain. Now, this is a civil matter, but one that, if he does lose, could cost him a great deal of money. In a lengthy statement, he called the investigation a scam. A portion of the statement reads, and I quote, "I once asked, if you are innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment? Now I know the answer to that question. When your family, your company, and all the people in your orbit have become targets of an unfounded, politically motivated witch hunt, you have no choice." Now, some of the ongoing investigation also include associates of Mr. Trump. Tomorrow, for example, longtime Trump chief financial officer Alan Weisselberg is slated to appear back in court. He is facing charges of tax fraud. Dana?
David Lee Miller, thank you for the update this morning.
Let's get some analysis, Dana, with Byron York. Welcome back to the program, Byron. Good morning to you. So we have a little bit of news about the possibility of an informant on the inside. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's the case. But it's Thursday. Now we're 3 full days on and not a peep from our government. Should we accept that?
No. I mean, the most incredible thing about this event, which we should remind everybody was totally unprecedented, never happened before in U.S. history, is that we just don't know what happened. As Phil Keating was saying, it appeared that things were going rather smoothly between the Justice Department and the Trump Organization. The Trump Organization had cooperated. There was this visit by the Justice Department to Mar-a-Lago on June the 3rd. There was this request that the Trump people put a bigger lock on the door, which they did. There was a subpoena for video, which Trump provided, and then boom, there's this raid. No subpoena for the documents. They didn't use any less intrusive method to get the documents, and bang, there's 30 FBI agents at Mar-a-Lago. We don't know why that happened.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the possibilities is this idea of an informant. And I think that will also fuel a lot of speculation and suspicion, because is that somebody who was willingly an informant or under, not, I'm going to say coercion, but facing some other sort of trouble, so then asked to be an FBI informant? You know, Byron, this could spiral if there's no further explanation from the FBI.
Oh, absolutely. In the absence of actual information, all sorts of speculation arises, and there's been all sorts of crazy speculation about what might be going on here. But if there was an informant, you have to wonder, well, why is the person informing? Is there another investigation going on that they're involved with? And indeed, there has been a lot of speculation. We know the Justice Department is looking into the former president in the January 6th investigation. Are these two things somehow connected? Again, we don't know.
Newsweek came out with a piece yesterday afternoon. Have you seen that, Byron? I would consider it probably the most extensive reporting on the story, if it all is the case. It leaves you with the impression that the FBI wanted to be in Florida when Trump wasn't there, and they thought they could carry out this act in a more subtle way, or at least that's the impression the piece gives you. And I think at the very end of the article, it talks about FBI Director Christopher Wray, and the person they talked to, an anonymous official, says it really is a case of the Bureau misreading the impact. I think as we sit here today, that's pretty accurate.
You know, I had to laugh when I read that piece. The idea that the FBI thought they could raid Mar-a-Lago in a nice, quiet, non-political sort of way and it wouldn't become controversial. I mean, that's nuts. That's simply not going to happen. But the biggest question here is still, there seems to be a disparity between the aggressiveness of the method used, that is, a raid on Mar-a-Lago, and the underlying issue, which is a dispute over document handling. I mean, did that really justify this raid, or is there something else going on? And we really need to see a number of documents. We need to see the search warrant, which President Trump could release if he wanted, but we also need to see the underlying documents that explain why the warrant was granted, and that's something the Justice Department has kept secret.
Thank you, Byron. Trying to piece it together as we go along. You're doing your best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's another story that is going on, which is the IRS planning to hire these 87,000 agents. Well, in order to do that, you have to advertise.
That's right. Yeah.
So there was a job posting from the IRS, and it said amongst the things you should be willing to do is to carry a firearm and be willing to use deadly force if necessary to go after taxpayers in an audit.
Well, apparently they deleted that, then they reposted it, and I'm told they deleted it again. So I don't know what the status is. But if you see that and you hear that they're giving all these billions of dollars to the IRS, you're probably going to shake your head and say, what's going on there in D.C. and what's going to come of this in the future? One last point on this whole topic of, I mean, you mentioned it a moment ago. It's Thursday. Maybe we'll get a statement from the Department of Justice today. Maybe we'll get a statement from the Attorney General today. Maybe we won't. And if we don't, we go into the weekend still wondering what was this all about. That's one point. The other point is I think it's up to 101 days as of today since that decision on Roe v. Wade was leaked. And we still don't know who the leaker is. Remember, we were told we're going to get to the bottom of that, so now you're going on 3.5 months on that story as well. And just a question, can Washington do what it wants to do on its own time without answering questions like these? I think they're big questions that deserve answers.
And speculation loves a vacuum, right?
Yes.
More than anything else in the world. So we'll keep an eye on that. Also, there's this from the president.
Today, we received news that our economy had 0% inflation in the month of July. 0%.
So all you mathematicians gather around. It's 0%, but the numbers beg to differ. However, consumer prices up nearly 9% from last year. Wholesale prices up 10%. Maria Bartiromo on what that means for the economy moving forward. Coming up, Dana.
We are learning Iran not only put a bounty on the head of former National Security Advisor John Bolton, but also on former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. We have the stunning details.
And police off months after cutting tens of millions of dollars from various police departments. Los Angeles City Council members yesterday approved funding for more police patrols in Hollywood. That neighborhood seeing a massive increase in crime from a year ago. William LaJeunesse is on the story, joins us from Los Angeles. William, good morning.
Good morning, Bill. Homicides in Hollywood are up 75%, robbery and theft up 23%. The city can obviously now justify that increase, and to underscore the violence, 2 shootings of officers this week, an off-duty cop killed in a robbery attempt, and last night an officer shot in the face after a 911 call of 2 brothers fighting. That officer is in stable condition, a relative also injured, and a neighbor hit by shrapnel. The shooter, in his 40s, gave up just hours ago after deputies used a flashbang and began to move in with armored vehicles.
I seen an officer shot in the face. It was pretty bad. I seen him actually take him into the ambulance. I seen a lady, which claims to be the suspect's mom, I think. She was shot in the chest and arm.
This follows the shooting Monday of rookie officer Gardiel Solario, who was killed as he was leaving the gym by a man who should have been in jail. So get this, 20-year-old Carlos Del Cid. He's a felon. Police arrested in December. He was released the next day. 2 months later, arrested again twice for burglary and intimidating a witness and assault with a deadly weapon. But he was sentenced to 180 days in jail, but was released the same morning. Monday, he attempted to rob Officer Solario, who tried to get away in his vehicle. Del Cid fired multiple times. The DA, George Gascon, has already said he will not seek the death penalty. As for the LAPD budget bill, after cuts following that Black Lives Matter protests, crime increased. Now the city council is reversing course, approving a budget increase, adding 700 officers, some to Hollywood because of the spike in crime there. Shots fired up 35%.
Imagine that. William LaJeunesse, thank you from LA today. Very interesting. Thanks, Dana.
Some of the nation's top police officials sounding the alarm over an officer shortage. They say officers and even police chiefs are leaving the force at an unprecedented rate. Our next guest calling it a crisis, and I would agree. National Fraternal Order of Police President Patrick Yos is with us now. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to show people a couple of things here. One of the reasons that you have this problem is 42.7% resignations in 2021 than in 2029. So that's a huge increase. 23% more retirements in 2021. And one of the things that we had a guest on earlier this week talking about is that if you take away the police are a good guy, if you take that away, then there's very little incentive to stay in the police force.
All right. So, Dana, thanks for having me on. Look, at the end of the day, what we have here is we have just a total lack of respect for the law enforcement profession that has happened over a period of time where we eroded our noble profession. So our whole system is based off of the best and the brightest applying for this job and becoming the next wave of law enforcement. And what we see now is nationally, a recent survey shows 45% higher retirements with a 20% resignation, and you go down as much as 90% less applicants in New Jersey for troopers. Chicago is 83% less applicants than they had previously, and in NYPD they're looking at a 42% increase in just retirements for this year alone. There is definitely a crisis created by a number of things. Law enforcement is just not attracting the best and the brightest, and we're losing experience at a level that should be a concern to every American.
And what is the long-term consequences of that I would say for a generation or more?
I have to agree with you. Look, anyone in law enforcement knows that if we found applicants we needed for every position filled right now, we're probably looking to 3, 5, 6, 7 years before that becomes an effective officer. And a bigger problem we have is those that would teach, that would convey, that relate that knowledge onto the next generation, the next wave of law enforcement. Well, they're leaving. They're finding more stable jobs for a number of reasons. Look, crime's going up. That revolving door criminal justice system, violent crime is created. Anyone in law enforcement can tell you the vast majority of violent crime is committed by the same people. We need to take them off the streets, but allowing them to come back on the streets makes our communities, makes our jobs less safe. So far this year, there have been 217 officers shot in the line of duty, and a large percentage of that is ambush attacks of law enforcement simply because of the color of the uniform. So we're in a crisis situation right now with manpower, and it's time to recognize that the consequences of the demonization of law enforcement and be part of the solution to this problem. One thing Americans are united on, there's no question. Look at poll after poll after poll. They're concerned about crime in our nation. And it's time to have those meaningful discussions on how we can move past this, how we can attract that next wave of law enforcement, how we can stop the hemorrhaging. And keep in mind, too, those officers who suit up and show up every day, some 800,000 across this country, look at the burden that they're carrying as well, working short, having to work longer hours, and all of the demands it takes. Well, what about their well-being? So we're in a crisis situation, and it's time to take action to reverse course and put us on the right path. There are bills before Congress right now that can give some immediate relief to manpower shortages and training, and it's time. Well, I understand and respect the legislative process, but right now what we're seeing is a crisis, and we need some immediate action.
The Democrats in the House, however, decided yesterday that they are not going to take up that bill at this point, but the pressure is on and the crisis is real. Patrick Yo's Fraternal Order of Police, thank you. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you very much.
Make my day. There could hardly be anything better to aid my campaign against Beto O'Rourke than to have Beto O'Rourke have his campaign aided by a bunch of New Yorkers.
So that's the Texas Governor Greg Abbott telling New York City Mayor Eric Adams to go ahead, try it, right? Make my day. The showdown with the Big Apple escalates. Brian Kilmeade on the border state, and the big open now. Fox News alert on the economy. Moments ago, Labor Department announcing wholesale prices in June were up nearly 10%. We saw a similar story yesterday showing consumer prices dropping slightly last month, but still remaining close to a 4-decade high. Investors reacting right now of about 250 at the open. Really good day yesterday for the Dow 30 and the tech sector as well. Come on over here to the board because there's a lot of concern right now about a recession. Is it going to happen? Are we in one? Are we not? Well, here's the official definition, right? Got a period of temporary economic decline that takes you over 2 successive quarters. This is the important point in all of this now. That's a period of 6 months. And that's being debated by economists as to whether or not we're there or whether or not we've dodged a bullet. Historically, go back about 14 years, this was the fallout from 2008. That was brutal. You remember that. This is COVID. Look where we went there. And at the moment, this is where we are here. You can see 2 quarters right there in the red. It's not severe like we saw in 2008 or during 2020 during COVID. But let me show you a little bit about the concerns here, okay? Right before the economic collapse of January of 2008, we were only adding about 11,000 jobs a year. But this was the blowout number in July. That's really good, 528,000 for July of 2022. Now come forward a little bit. This is the concern. For people in America working more than one job, in 2008 it was around 5%. We're getting around that number again at 4.8% in the year 2022. Watch this number. These are jobless claims ticking up starting back in May of 2022. So 3 months ago, it continues to rise higher, right now about 260,000. But the big number is that one right there. Inflation. Back in 2008 was at 5%. We're now at 8.5%. Maria Bartiromo knows all about this. Maria, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Your analysis on the numbers that we have yesterday and today. How do you see it?
Hey, Bill, thanks very much. Good morning to you. Well, they are certainly better than expected and moving in the right direction. Yesterday, we saw the consumer price index come way down from what we saw in the month of June at 8.5%. That is better than the 9.1% we saw in June. Same situation today with inflation at the production level. Producers are now seeing inflation up, but not as bad as the month of June. We had a reading of up 9.8% in the month of July. That is down from the 10.4% that was expected, and certainly down from the 11% that we saw in June. So bottom line here, what we are seeing is the price of oil come down. So we were expecting a pretty good number on CPI and on PPI, because look at what happened in the month of July. Oil prices were coming off of the massive highs that we saw earlier in the year. This does not mean necessarily that inflation has peaked. However, it does indicate that things are beginning to move in the right direction for oil. Oil prices are down, but one of the reasons that oil was up was not necessarily an inflation fighting story, but more a story of an economy that is not relying on American production. So why did oil prices come down in July? I'll tell you right now, it has to do with a slowing economy. You are looking at the prospect of recession. 2 quarters of contraction is what we saw in the first and second quarter. And as a result of that contraction and a sharp slowdown of the economy and expectations of a continued slowdown rest of the year, energy demand has slowed. So people are not driving as much. People are not using as much oil. So oil prices move in supply and demand. Oil prices came down. That's good news, but that's not the whole story. Food prices are still soaring. Look at a dozen eggs. Look at the price of meat, the price of bread. We're still talking about double-digit increases year over year, and certainly increases month over month. We need to see more of the alleviating of prices on food as well as energy going forward. So I'm not ready to commit to you right now to say we have turned a corner. I don't believe so. In fact, yesterday I spoke with John Katsmatidis from Graciti's, and he said, no, producers are still charging what they're charging, and that means stores, grocery stores, are not going to let up on these high prices. So we'll probably see that inflation at the food level continue. However, you have to believe this is a positive that energy has come down so much. It's only come down, though, because of a slowing economy. The other issue in this economy is the participation rate. You know that productivity has plummeted, and we need to get people back in the workforce. That participation rate remains stuck, and that's something that we need to see as well in order to have confidence that job creation can resume the way it was in the last month.
Maria, let me play a clip for you from yesterday at the White House, right? Listen to the number. Roll it.
I just want to say a number. 0. Today, we received news that our economy had 0% inflation in the month of July. 0%. Here's what that means. While the price of some things went up last month, the price of other things went down.
How is that message being received at 0?
Well, it's being received as if it's a joke. I mean, the truth is, Bill, is this is more misinformation and disinformation. We are looking at inflation up 8.5%, and on a producer level, higher than that. So we do have 8.5% inflation at a time that wages are growing much lower. Inflation is still cutting into people's ability to spend money that they're earning. The president is calling it zero inflation. It's just not true. That's not the way people look at inflation. That is not the way it's measured. It's measured year over year to have a clear understanding of how prices are different year over year. So we're right now running at an inflation rate of 8.5%. Certainly not zero. It's unbelievable, though, that the Democrats can get away with coming up with a $700 billion revenue package and call it an Inflation Reduction Act. That's the same thing as calling inflation zero.
How about that for advertising? Maria, nice to see you. Thanks for your analysis. We'll call on you again real soon. Maria Bartiromo, thank you.
You got it.
The White House tried that.
Yes.
The Wall Street Journal editorial board calling them out for it. An editorial today saying zero inflation, not quite. Real average weekly earnings are still down 3.6% over the last 12 months.
Two things on that. Maria's exactly right about the price of gasoline. Demand's dropping, which what the Fed wants right now, but that food price at greater than 10% year over year is no bueno.
We get jobs numbers tomorrow.
Okay.
I believe. So then we'll
see what we do then.
See what we're finding out from that. Also, this.
Dana reads sports.
A big league prospect living up to the hype. Watch this.
Swing, high fly ball, deep left field. Vaughn Grissom has homered over the monster.
Vaughn Grissom of the Atlanta Braves hitting a home run against the Red Sox in his major league debut. He was called up earlier from AA ball, but it looks like Grissom is not leaving the majors baseball. The Field of Dreams game is being played tonight. The Cubs going against Bill Hemmer's Cincinnati Reds. Coverage begins at 6 p.m. Eastern on the Fox
I'm going to tell
Network.
you this, Perino, very good job, Dana Reed Sports. I love it. Great job there. I'm going to predict a victory tonight for Cincinnati. They've had a very tough season. They've traded their entire team away. They're playing like a AAA ball club in a major league game. But in a field of dreams, you can dream. So we'll see how it goes.
Bill will be dreaming tonight, and we will fill you in tomorrow. Also, this down in Texas, there's a murder mystery of a college freshman plunging to his death during a lakeside weekend getaway. 5 teens now facing a slew of charges after that 2019 incident. And the fentanyl crisis impacting cities nationwide as cartels continue to threaten the southern border as treat the southern border, as a shipping corridor. Watch this.
The bottom line is the cartels want to make money. They don't care who they harm. They don't care who they kill because they're ruthless.
Đừng có nghe lời những Lan nữa chị ơi, chị để dành đó đi chị ơi. Cả anh em đang lại vô hết bài thấu đường nào anh em ơi. Anh em vô cổng 1 nha, thầy lo hết. Cam Thục Trinh có đi bài thấu đường không? Theo sao đi? Không, mày thầy viết hết cho. Vô đi, thầy viết hết cho.
Má cái thằng Vinagame này mình đã cộng đồ rớt rồi đi đập đồ cũng rớt rồi, giờ cường quá đồ cũng rớt luôn.
Bị hơi đông nha anh em ơi, anh em đi chung chung nha, có chuyện chết đấy. Sẽ được thôi chị ơi, đừng gấp. Sáng này em đập cây vũ khí lên được 55 rồi, 4 phát xịt lên được rồi.
Cộng mấy.
Cố lên vợ ơi, cố lên, đập nữa đi.
Cộng 1 vô đây thầy lo hết chị ơi. Toàn ban vô cộng 1 anh em ơi, toàn ban vô cộng 1 nha. Chưa có PT, vô PT thầy nè.
Thầy Bất Minh ơi, kéo chị đi.
Còn một lót bạch hổ đường anh em ơi.
Vô VT thầy nha. Hồ mà có địch là thầy chạy không á, không có nắm đầu được thầy đâu.
Ok chị, bao lên tầng 4. Anh cứ nói vậy không. Còn bao nhiêu cũng một nha anh em ơi, có thiên địa nha anh em ơi. Còn bao nhiêu hết cũng một nha.
Trời ơi, ạc này gia viên cấp 2 luôn rồi ta.
Ủa anh Khánh Hà sao không tẩy mấy cái dòng kia qua anh Khánh Hà?
Ba bốn thằng dí thầy về sao thầy không chạy được.
Không có biết. Rồi tự nhiên cái thấy nó ấy vô cái ghép vô luôn. Vãi ngu gần chết đây nè, tức là nãy giờ muốn đỏ người luôn nè.
Tín vật thì còn hơn 200 cái, đủ lên cuốn bí kíp 4 luôn.
Hoàng em mua ạc đó hay gì hả Hoàng ơi?
Anh tính đâu á, là ghép vô là nó lên được chiến, ai về đâu có biết rồi đâu.
Dạ anh ơi, em mua ạc này cho bé Phương chơi anh ơi. Còn em vẫn chơi tàng kiếm mà.
Ủa nhiều Hoàng ơi. Còn bao nhiêu hết cũng một anh em ơi.
500 anh ơi.
$500 đắt quá.
Ạc 500 là quá rẻ luôn á.
Đắt rồi, 500 đắt rồi.
500 ok rồi.